Welcome back. Today we're going to be thinking about how to represent spatial data. So how do we represent the relationships that have meaning when we think about the relation between them in space? And a classic way to do this is using maps. And so let's import some data that can be represented using a map. Here's the World Happiness Report. Basically, we have a series of countries, and for each country, we have a ladder score. That's the sort of average happiness score. We have some other information about these countries in terms of like their per capita GDP and things like that. We could imagine lots of different relationships that we would show here. For instance, we could immediately test whether this ladder score, the happiness score, has any relationship to healthy life expectancy, like how long can you do the things that you would like to do, or the GDP per capita in the country. I think all of these would be quite interesting, but one of the questions somebody might have is like, are there regions of the country that do well by whatever metric is happening here? And there's many more pages, right? So there's 6 pages of this, so many countries are present. Not every country in the world, but a lot of them are here. So let's think about how we might map that using Plotly. And so we'll start out by importing Plotly as we normally do. So from plotly.subplots import make subplots, and we have this. Then we can say we need to import this data. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we could import this data. In the past, we've used NumPy, but there's a lot of columns here, and really we only want a few. So we could use NumPy in order to import like country name and ladder score only. There are keywords for this, so we could import things. Well, let's just show you. So we could say import NumPy as NP, and then we could say country and happiness equals np.gen from text, and we want whatever this file name was, World Happiness Report. So let's see, there it is. And then we say the delimiter is equal to this. We're going to skip headers, just the first one. And now we have another keyword, which is use columns. And this is a list of the columns we would like to use. So we want the first column and the third column. But remember, Python counts starting at 0. So this is 0, 1, 2. So the columns that we want to use are 0 and 2. And when I do that, I forgot to say unpack. Unpack equals true. That will give us back columns so that we can actually pick those columns. Now when we inspect our variables, we see that we have the happiness report as or happiness score, but then a bunch of not in numbers because it's true. The country names are not numbers. So if we wanted to do this properly, what we would actually do is import the happiness score separately, and then import the country name separately so that we can handle it as not a number. And so we'll say countries, and then delimiter, use column 0. We still have not a number here for countries, and so we need to tell it what the data type is. And so now we have dtype, data type equals str. That's the sort of official Python name for a string. And now you'll see that we do have countries, and it's the like names or the strings associated with each country. So now we have the data imported and we're ready to make a map. So let's go ahead and do that. Figure, equals make subplots, and then we go from that to adding the component that is the map. And so, in the past we've done things like add bar or add pie. It turns out that we can't do that with just maps. Instead, we're going to add the more general trace. And then once we have the trace, we need to add the actual element we want, which is we're going to make a choropleth here. And so the way to do that is go.choropleth, and geo actually refers to graph objects. And so we need to import graph objects. So we're going to need a different component of Plotly now. So import plotly.graph objects as geo. And now we have access to this graph object choropleth. And so in the past, we could have always been doing things this way, actually, adding a trace and then giving it a graph object that is that trace. Here we have to do that. And so that's why we're using it right now. So let's go ahead and just make this like a little bit more readable for me. Okay. So when we think about constructing a choropleth, we need a few things. One, we need to understand what the regions are we're trying to color. And then we need to have values that we assign those colors to. So the places that we want to color are the locations. So the locations are our countries. That's how we would like to arrange the coloring. Now, the Plotly won't immediately know that's what we're trying to do. And so we also need to tell it the location mode that we're going to be using, which in this case is country names. All right, so now it knows that it's actually trying to parse this list of country names that we're going to give it. And then we need to give it something to color by. And so Z equals the happiness. So we're saying use these values to determine the color that we're going to color each component. And then we also need to set up a new axis. So color axis, and then we just need to give this a name so that we can refer back to it later on when we're really designing this carefully. Okay, so Z, you can think of this almost as like 3 dimensions, I guess. And so we have the countries are located in a 2D plane in X and Y. And then the third dimension Z, that's what we're coloring things by. And so that's what you have here, happiness. Okay, so at this point, we basically should have the image that we want, fig.show. And let's see what happens. Oh, go is not defined. I did not run this cell. So now we have a choropleth. There's a lot that happened under the hood, obviously. Plotly is aware, it has built into it maps with countries and their geographical borders. And so we can leverage that to have it be able to basically look at country names and add them back in. So, all right, we can still do all the normal things that we want to do. For instance, we could say fig.update layout, title, and then we could say something like the Nordic countries are happy. And then that title will appear, we can move it around, and we can control the behavior of this however we might like. And it turns out that Finland here is the happiest country in this particular poll, but it usually is either the happiest or amongst the happiest, again, by the metric that this is measuring things by. Okay, so what else could we do? Well, we could think about how we could format like this color bar and where it is, and that's actually something we're going to do in a future video, so we'll leave that for now. Let's just think about what else we might like to do here. Well, we could add annotations. We could try to control sort of like the default color for things that aren't measured. So I can see Greenland and Antarctica are not. And so let's just cover a little bit of what we can do with the choropleth there. And so Let's have land color. So essentially the way this is working is that all the land gets colored a particular color, and then on top of that we paint the color that's associated with the happiness index. And so this would be I don't know, we could pick a color that's not present there. So how about just red? I mean, it's not going to look the best, but that's okay. So that's our land color. And I forgot that we need to put this inside of geometry. So this is specifying the geometry associated with the map. I spell it right. And now we have this red land, right? This maybe a better choice would have been like light blue. All right. Something else we could do is we could color the lakes. So show lakes or change their lake color. There's lots of things we could do here. So right now, I mean, look at all these lakes here in the Great Lakes. So we could not show them if we're like, I don't really care about representing this map as accurately as possible in terms of the water, because really I care about the countries, and yeah, the lakes will just mess things up. So we can get rid of that. We could have added the lake color in and changed or showed the lakes and edited the lake color. All of those sorts of things are possible. And I guess I'll just say, if you would like to, you can read up in the documentation about exactly what you can and can't change. But essentially, this is the basics of how one makes a choropleth and plotly. You just need a list of country names with some sort of value that you want to represent. And then it's as simple as this to make these fancy looking charts here that, you know, are interactive and scrollable and pretty nice for not a lot of effort, in my opinion. Okay, well, I'll see you in the next video.